Happy October, everyone. I hope you're keeping things scary and spooky all month long. We here at the channel have decided to add a few things this month to keep in the Halloween spirit. Add a few extra scares, give you some extra content. So here's a quick top 5 of one of the greatest horror video game franchises. Hell, one of the greatest video game franchises of all time, Castlevania. Now, I'm not going to bog this down with all of the storylines and what have you. Maybe we can save that for a different video. Also, this is my personal top 5 of the franchise, so nothing official. Number 5, Castlevania Bloodlines. If you've seen the show before, you know that Joe and myself were not Sega kids. And looking at this now, that is a shame. Because back in May, Konami released the Castlevania Anniversary Collection, which included this Sega Genesis title. All I can say is wow. I love this game. So much so that if I had been playing this game in the early 90s, like when it came out, this might be close to being my favorite game in the franchise. I was worried initially that it was going to be a ripoff of Super Castlevania IV, you know, Super Nintendo's 16-bit version entry into the franchise. But just upon playing this thing for a few minutes, it is evident that it's its own game. The graphics and sound have to be some of the best on the Sega Genesis. The difficulty does not hold back at all. You know, usually you get a few easy stages early on in some of these games, but this game consistently brings the heat throughout. I mean, I think there was a multiple boss fight like early on in the game, if I remember correctly, which is great. Took me by surprise. And as a Castlevania fan would expect, the music in this game is amazing. The entire Castlevania franchise is known for having incredibly epic music. This time around, it has that certain charm that only the Sega Genesis could produce. Number 4, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. So don't be mad, this is my list after all. I gravitate toward side-scrolling, linear-based Castlevania. I didn't have a PlayStation 1. At that time, I had opted for the N64, but I did buy Symphony of the Night many, many years ago when it was made available for purchase on the Xbox 360. Holy shit, I missed out on another classic game here while it was in its prime. The game is side-scrolling, but there's exploration and leveling up as well. This is the first Castlevania game to do that, coining what the fans have dubbed Metroidvania. Again, the graphics and sound are through the roof amazing. I've never beaten this game, but I actually think about it often, funny enough. Like I'd go on some secret vacation with this game and play it all week long. Like any real great game, Symphony of the Night absolutely draws you in from the get-go. I need to play this masterpiece more, but even in the little time I have played with it, this still managed to land number 4 on my spot, which is pretty damn good. Number 3, Castlevania The First, the original. The third best? Well, for me it is, and that's pretty damn good too, like every game mentioned in this list. And technically, an arcade game called Haunted Castle, released by Konami in 1988, was the first Castlevania game. But we all know that this bad boy is the first Castlevania game. And what a first impression it makes. For me, it was going from seeing fun-loving Mario to seeing Simon Belmont whip bats, ghosts, Medusa heads, and all kinds of nasties. I remember thinking, wow, this is a horror game. This is something totally different. We had horror movies, now we have horror games? Like, that was my first thought on this. If you played this game around the time it came out, it laid down a perfect foundation for like the greatness that would come from this series. The gameplay, especially some of the jumping, can be a little stiff at first, but that's nothing that you can't adjust to. This is an absolute trend-setting classic. I raise my glass to you, OG Castlevania. Cheers. Number 2, Super Castlevania IV. This game was big for us, and I mean big. We saw what Castlevania was like on the NES 3 times before we sunk our teeth into this masterpiece. Released in 1991, Super Castlevania IV was years ahead of its time. I'd mentioned that Bloodlines was Sega's 16-bit Castlevania, but that was released in 1994. It's unreal how good Super Castlevania IV is. The graphics blew me away, and the gameplay is incredible. You really feel like you're in control of Simon Belmont. They introduced a new way to kill enemies with the whip, with a swinging whip, and now you can grapple with it. Some of the stages in this have spinning, almost 3D elements around it. Now again, Bloodlines had that too, but that was 3 years later. The stereo sound quality in this game might be the best the SNES had to offer. I remember playing this up in our attic with about 6 speakers hooked up around me, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, 2 on the side. It absolutely blew me away. I replay this game a lot to this day. It has left an impression that will last forever. But this might be the most fun Castlevania game to play. The satisfaction factor is so high in this game, you have to keep playing it. There is maybe one issue with this game, but I will mention that soon enough. Honorable mention. Now, before I get to number 1, I have to mention Castlevania II: Simon's Quest. I feel like this one is always the most hated on of the original trilogy. It didn't make my top 5 because I hate it. It simply didn't make it because I really like these other games better. But Castlevania 2 is actually quite a good game once you figure out what you have to do. See, I believe this game departed from the run and whip formula a little too early. Does that mean the game sucks? Absolutely not. The music is absolutely iconic in this one. The game plays very, very well throughout. And this might actually be the most gothic of the series if you look at the color schemes. Yeah, grab a walkthrough of this game, play it late at night close to Halloween. It's great. You will love it. Number 1, Castlevania III. That's right, people. I'm a sucker for side characters. Remember when I mentioned there was maybe one thing missing or wrong from Super Castlevania IV? It's the side characters. And Castlevania 3 has them. 3 of them, actually. I remember us beating the boss in the clock tower and then getting the option to fight alongside Grant. Here, just watch how epic this is. And that's in the beginning of the game. That's like level 2 if you choose that path. You could choose to leave this poor bastard behind, but how could you? Internet, tell me if you've ever left Grant behind. Shame on you if you did. Anyway, the side characters have special abilities. Grant can climb on walls, Alucard can turn into a bat, and Sypha can do spells and shit, I think. I don't know, I've never quite figured her out or played with her enough. I was completely in awe of the fact that you could switch characters by pressing select at any point in the gameplay. I've never beaten this game. It is so hard toward the end, but it is so very fun to play. I probably go back to this one the most. That'll do it for my very quick top 5 Castlevania games. Please subscribe and keep a lookout for more spooky content this month. And as always, treat each other well.